Good morning, dear students of class 11. Let's now continue with the second part of the video on the short story Quality, written by John Galsworthy. The lines beginning from the next page. I cannot forget that day on which I had occasion to say to him, Mr. Gessler, that last pair of town walking boots creaked, you know. So, on one particular occasion, the narrator says that he happened to mention this to Mr. Gessler, that the last pair of boots which he had purchased from him, those boots were making some sort of creaking noise as he walked. So normally, Mr. Gessler's work is so perfect that there should be no flaw whatsoever in the manufacturing process of the boots he made. So when the narrator said this, this was Mr. Gessler's reaction. He looked at me for a time without replying, as if expecting me to withdraw or qualify the statement. So for some time he just looked at the narrator's face as if he was expecting that the narrator should take back whatever he had said. And then finally he spoke up and said, "It shouldn't have creaked." Meaning to say, it shouldn't have creaked. That means Mr. Gessler is so sure about whatever he made with his own hands that there could be no flaw whatsoever in what he made. So it shouldn't have creaked. It did, I'm afraid. You got them wet before they found themselves. So this is what Mr. Gessler says, that you must have got your boots wet before the boots could settle down on your feet properly. See, what happens is when you buy a new pair of shoes or boots, you need to wear them, and initially they seem to be a bit uncomfortable on your feet because the new material of the leather and the sole take time to settle down with the shape of your foot. But eventually, after maybe using it for one or two times, the boot or the shoe gradually settles down, finds its place, and then you don't have any discomfort. So that is what Mr. Gessler is trying to say here, that you must have got your boots wet before they found themselves. That's the reason they creaked. But the narrator says, I don't think so. At that, he lowered his eyes as if hunting for memory of those boots, and I felt sorry I had mentioned this grave thing. So, this was, a unique shoemaker, that he never made things for which the customer could complain, and it was happening. So, even the customer starts feeling sorry that he had mentioned that flaw in the product. Send them back, he said. Send them back. I will look at them. I will have a look at the boots. A feeling of compassion for my creaking boots surged up in me. So well could I imagine the sorrowful long curiosity of regard which he would bend on them. So the narrator knew that once he sent back the boots, he would spend a long time bending over them to find the exact reason why the boots were creaking. So this is something which the narrator starts imagining immediately. Some boots, he said slowly, that is, some boots, are bad from birth. That means they are bad from the very birth. That means from the very moment they are made, they have some problem. If I can do nothing with them, I take them off your bill. If I cannot do anything to improve upon the quality of the shoes or the boots, then I don't bill you at all. I just take them back, and I don't ask for money if your boots do not satisfy you. So this is what he says. Once only, I went absent-mindedly into his shop in a pair of boots bought in an emergency at some large firms. He took my order without showing me any leather, and I could feel his eyes penetrating the inferior integument of my foot. At last he said, "Those are not my boots." So once, and the narrator says that he did it only once, not more than once. By mistake, in a hurry, he wore some other boots made by some commercial firm that made boots. So he probably purchased sometimes he would go and purchase boots from other shoe stores also, uh, when he needed them real quick. So on one occasion, he wore such boots to Mr. Gessler's shop. Now, Mr. Gessler immediately noticed that he was not wearing the boots made by him, and so he was offended, and he did not bother to show him the piece of leather when he was ordering a new pair of boots. Normally, what he does, he brings out a piece of leather and shows it to his customer, that is the narrator, and then he takes the order, takes the measurement, and makes the boots. But this time, he did not bring out any leather, and he was eyeing his boots with a kind of, you could say, disappointment, as if he was not happy with the material and the built quality of the boots he was wearing. So, those are not my boots, he finally says, that those are not my boots. Imagine, he has sold, even if he sells his boots, he still considers his handiwork as his own. And that's why when he sees the narrator wearing something which is not made by him, he points it out to him and says, "Those are not my boots." The tone was not one of anger, nor of sorrow, not even of contempt. So there was no specific quality in the tone of his voice. He was not angry, he was not upset. From the tone of his voice, at least one could not say that he was angry or he was contemptuous or he was upset. But there was in it something quiet that froze the blood. He put his hand down and pressed a finger on the place where the left boot, endeavoring to be fashionable, was not quite comfortable. You see, sometimes for the sake of fashion, people have to wear dresses and even shoes that are not very comfortable. You want to look elegant, and for that matter, you even sacrifice your comfort. Now, this pair of boots he was wearing, the narrator was wearing, was quite fashionable, not the kind normally Mr. Gessler made. So, probably because of fashion reason, he had purchased these boots from some other shop. So, these boots were not really suitable for his feet, and that is what Mr. Gessler points out. He points at a particular place in the boot and says that it hurts you in this particular place. Those big worms have no self-respect, Drash. Those big firms that make shoes commercially, they have no self-respect. They only make trash. That is what he means. And then, as if something had given way within him, he spoke long and bitterly. It was the only time I ever heard him discuss the conditions and hardships of his trade. What was his trade? Shoemaking. So, this was the only time, and maybe the very first and last time, that Mr. Gessler spoke about the difficulty, the struggle that he had to put in, he and his brother, in order to survive in this age of commercialization, where shoes and boots and so many other requirements of human beings are mass produced by means of machines, and so quality is sacrificed. They only focus at fashion and quantity, but not at quality. So he complained about it in a way. He brought it out when he said this to the narrator. So, the hardships of his trade. They get it all, he said. They get it by advertisement, not by work. They who? Those commercial firms. They get all the customers. And they manage to get the customers because of the fact that they give big ads. And they don't impress the customers by their work, their ads, their neon signs, and their publicity draws customers. People go and buy from them, and so they get all the customers. But as far as quality is concerned, well, they don't focus on that at all. They take it away from us who love our boots. They take away from us our customers who love our boots. it comes to this: presently I have no work. And so it comes to this, that at present I don't have any work, because people don't come to me. They go to those firms, they go to those big stores where there are a variety of shoes on display, boots on display, all of different fashions, and people go there, flock there, and buy things from there. Nobody comes to me, and I have no work. Every year it gets less, you will see. So it decreases. My customers are decreasing year by year. I am running out of customers and I am losing out in this competition. And looking at his lined face, I saw things I had never noticed before. Bitter things and bitter struggle. And what a lot of grey hairs there seemed suddenly in his red beard. So, this man, under pressure, was suddenly developing grey hair, a lot of it. And also his face was lined. That means he was growing older under pressure. See, when there is too much of pressure on an individual, he tends to grow older much faster than normal, and also starts falling ill because of depression. So, this is what was happening to Mr. Gessler. The narrator could see it, he could guess it. As best I could, I explained the circumstances of the purchase of those ill-omened boots. So the narrator tried to explain to Mr. Gessler as to what had actually made him buy those inferior boots, because he normally never buys boots from other shoe stores or boot stores. He always comes to Mr. Gessler, but under what circumstances he had purchased, he explained. But his face and voice made so deep impression that during the next few minutes I ordered many pairs. So the narrator was feeling very sorry for Mr. Gessler, and the way he looked and the way he spoke, everything just had an impact on the narrator's mind, and he ended up ordering not one but several pairs of boots. Nemesis fell. What is Nemesis? Nemesis is luck. Nemesis is what you can put in simpler terms as karma. Okay, so when you do something good, you expect good returns out of it. So let's see what happens here. They lasted more terribly than ever. So this was the nemesis. This was the good luck for the customer, but the bad luck for Mr. Gessler. Because these boots which he ordered, and he ordered many pairs, so he won't be needing to go to Mr. Gessler for a long time, maybe years, because his boots will be lasting a long time. They normally do, and this time Mr. Gessler made them so well so that he should not lose his customer, because he could see that his customer, the narrator, was already wearing boots made by some other firm and not by him. So he had made them so well with such quality that they lasted terribly than ever. And I was not able conscientiously to go to him for nearly 2 years. So that was 2 years went by after that, after he got these several pairs of boots from Mr. Gessler. He did not go to Mr. Gessler's shop for 2 years. When at last I went, I was surprised to find that outside one of the 2 little windows of his shop, another name was painted, also that of a bootmaker, making, of course, for the royal family. Now there were 2 shops let into one. If you remember, in the first video in the beginning we had read in your text, you can see there were 2 side-by-side shops which were interconnected. Both were of the Gesslers, the Gessler brothers. But now one of these 2 shops had a different signboard, and that signboard, as usual, like it always happens, boasted of making boots for the royal family. The old familiar boots, no longer in dignified isolation, were huddled in the single window. So those boots which were displayed in the shop window earlier, now they were put into one single window of that one shop in which now Mr. Gessler and his brother had probably shifted. So there was just one shop now. not two shops let into one, but just one. The other one they had given up. So inside, the now contracted or now smaller well of one little shop was more scented and darker than ever. Scented in the sense, scent of leather inside, and it was darker than before. And it was longer than usual too before a face peered down and the tip tap of the bast slippers began. So, like it happens always, when you go to Mr. Gessler's shop, you go inside, there's only one wooden chair inside, you sit down, and then after some time, Mr. Gessler peeps from up above. His workshop is above the shop, and then he gets down the staircase and comes and meets his customer. So, this time it took him much longer, but eventually the sound of the bast slippers could be heard in the staircase, and Mr. Gessler came downstairs and met the narrator. At last he stood before me and, gazing through those rusty iron spectacles, said, "Mr. isn't it?" So, Mr. So and so, name is not mentioned. You can guess it is the narrator. The narrator could be John Galsworthy himself. So, if you imagine, he could have possibly said, "Mr. Galsworthy, isn't it?" So, Mr. Gessler, I stammered, "but your boots are really too good, you know. See, these are quite decent still." And I stretched out to him my foot. He looked at it. "Yes," he said, "people do not want good boots, it seems." Yes, these are quite decent, I can see. But you see, now people don't want any decent boots. They just want fashionable things. Quality is not the main purpose behind buying boots. It's only fashion. So, well, people don't want to buy good boots. To get away from his reproachful eyes and voice, I hastily remarked, "What have you done to your shop? What have you done to your shop? Why has it become so small? What happened to the other portion? Why is it having a different signboard?" He answered quietly, "It was too expensive. It was too expensive. Do you want some boots? Have you come here to order for some boots?" I ordered 3 pairs, though I had only wanted 2, and quickly left. I do not know quite what feeling of being part, in his mind, of a conspiracy against him, or not perhaps so much against him as against his idea of boot. So the narrator was feeling uneasy, and he felt he should, instead of ordering 2 pairs, he should order 3 pairs. He ordered 3 pairs and quickly left the shop because, well, he was kind of blaming himself that he was part of the conspiracy. Although there was no conspiracy, but the narrator felt that way, that he was ordering so many boots and then he was coming back only after 2 years. So he is also partly responsible for the downfall of Mr. Gessler's fortunes, and that is why he could not face Mr. Gessler for long. He decides to go away after ordering 3 pairs. So one does not, I suppose, care to feel like that, for it was again many months before my next visit to his shop. Paid, I remember, with the feeling, "Oh, well, I can't leave the old boy, so here goes. Perhaps it'll be his elder brother." So after many months, he goes again, keeping this thought in his mind that I cannot leave this bootmaker and I cannot go and buy boots from some other shop. I will go to him. After all, I have patronized him for so many years, so I should go to him. So here goes, I am going once again. Maybe I'll meet him, or maybe his brother. For his elder brother, I knew, had not character enough to reproach me even dumbly. So elder brother would not have the character or the tendency to scold him, reproach him even dumbly. And to my relief, in the shop there did appear to be his elder brother, handling a piece of leather. "Well, Mr. Gessler," I said, "how are you?" He came close and peered at me. "I am pretty well," he said slowly. "I am pretty well." See, Mr. Gessler never says he is not well, though he is not well. He says, "I am pretty well, but my elder brother is dead." So, what do you guess of it? The one whom he thought to be the elder brother is actually the younger brother, and he is so old now. Within a few more months, he looks so older that he resembles his elder brother. And what happened to his elder brother? He says his elder brother died. And I saw that it was indeed himself, but how aged and wan. He was looking so old and so spent. He was totally changed, and never before had I heard him mention his brother. Much shocked, I murmured, "Oh, I am sorry." So it was always the younger brother, it was always the elder brother who would say, "I will ask my brother." But the younger brother never mentioned his elder brother. So this time it was the younger brother who looked like the elder brother and who tells the narrator that his elder brother is dead. Much shocked, I murmured, "Oh, I'm sorry." "Yes," he answered, "he was a good man. He made a good boot, but he is dead." Yes, he was a good man. He used to make good boots, but now he is dead. And he touched the top of his head, where the hair had suddenly gone as thin as it had been on that of his poor brother, to indicate, I suppose, the cause of death. He could not get over losing the other job. My elder brother could not overcome the pain of losing possession of the other shop. We had to somehow give it away, sell it off, or hand it over to another owner because we could not afford it any longer. So he became so upset after that that he was totally heartbroken, and then he died. "Do you want any boots?" And he held up the leather in his hand. "It's a beautiful piece." Once again, he holds up a piece of leather like he always does, and he says, "It's a beautiful piece." I ordered several pairs. It was very long before they came, but they were better than ever. One simply could not wear them out, and soon after that I went abroad. So the narrator went abroad. It was over a year before I was again in London, and the first shop I went to was my old friend's. Which shop? The Gessler's boots shop. I had left a man of 60. I came back to one of 75. In 1 year, this man had aged so much that he looked 75, though the man was supposed to be only 61. In 1 year, from 60 to 61, but he looked 75. Pinched and worn and tremulous. Tremulous. His hands, his limbs could not keep, still. They were always trembling now. He had lost control on his nerves, his muscles, who genuinely this time did not at first know me. He failed to recognize the narrator. "Oh, Mr. Gessler," I said, sick at heart, "how splendid your boots are. See, I have been wearing this pair nearly all the time I have been abroad, and they are not half worn out, are they?" He looked long at my boots, a pair of Russia leather, and his face seemed to regain steadiness. By looking at the boots, he is able to recognize his customer. Imagine, he is a true artist who remembers his art piece, his masterpiece, his artwork. He may forget the customer's face, but he doesn't forget his own handiwork. Putting his hand on my instep, he said, "Did they with you here? I had trouble with that bear, I remember. Did they fit you in this place? Instep, that is inner arch of one's foot, is called the instep. Did they fit you here? I remember I had trouble making this particular pair when I was giving it shape." I assured him that they had fitted beautifully. "Do you want any boots?" he said. "I can make them quickly. It is a slack time." It's a very slack time. Business is bad. I need money. I need customers. I don't have customers. Would you like to buy? Would you like to order? He's requesting. I answered, "Please, please. I want boots all round, every kind. Please, please, I want boots. All types of boots. Every kind of boots that you can possibly make." "I will make a fresh model. Your wood must be bigger." I will make a new model, a completely fresh model for you this time. And your foot must have also become a little bigger. So I'll make a fresh model. And with utter slowness, he traced round my foot and felt my toes, only once looking up to say, "Did I tell you my brother was dead? Did I tell you that my brother has died?" To watch him was painful. So feeble had he grown. I was glad to get away. It was too painful for the narrator to be there for a long time looking at the miserable Mr. Gessler, who looked 75 though he was only 61. I had given those boots up because many weeks had passed. When one evening they came, opening the parcel, I set the 4 pairs out in a row, 4 pairs of boots. Then one by one I tried them on. There was no doubt about it. In shape and fit, in finish and quality of leather, they were the best he had ever made me. And in the mouth of one of the town walking boots, I found his bill. The amount was the same as usual. This is another important aspect of the Gessler brothers. With the passing years, they don't increase their rates. They always charge the same. They always take the same money, same amount of money for their boots. They don't increase. So this was really strange because normally Mr. Gessler would never send the bill. The narrator would order and go, he would receive the boots, or else he would go to his shop and collect the boots and then make the payment by going there in person. But this time Mr. Gessler had sent the boots with the bill inside one of the boots. But it gave me quite a shock. So when he saw the bill, he got a shock because he couldn't believe that he was in so much need of money that he had sent the bill. He had never before sent it till quarter day. He would never send the bill before maybe quarter day. Quarter day in the sense, maybe quarter of a week, maybe 1 or 2 days after sending the boots. I flew downstairs. The narrator almost dashed or ran downstairs and wrote a check and posted it at once with my own hand. Now in their country, in London, the mail is delivered really very fast, not like India. So naturally, if anything is posted in the morning, by afternoon or evening, if it is within the town, it reaches the person to whom it is being sent. And if it is within the country, it reaches the latest by the following day. They don't need to have speed post like we need in India, because normal post never reaches. So their country, the postal department is much more efficient than ours. So he wrote a check, he went to the post office and he posted it with his own hand. A week later, passing the little street, I thought I would go in and tell him how splendidly the new boots fitted. But when I came to where his shop had been, his name was gone. Still there in the window were the slim pumps, the patent leathers with cloth tops, the sooty riding boots. I went in, very much disturbed. In the 2 little shops, again made into one, that means the other shop which was already sold to somebody else, that owner had taken over this shop also. Once again the 2 shops were joined together, but this time completely owned by a new owner. Was a young man with an English face. Now, there was a young man inside the shop, and he was definitely not German like the Gessler brothers were. It was the face of an Englishman. "Mr. Gessler in?" I said. "Is Mr. Gessler inside?" He gave me a strange, ingratiating look. Well, he was not very happy when he asked him this question. So he gave that kind of a look. "No, sir," he said. "No. But we can attend to anything with pleasure. We have taken the shop over. You have seen our name, no doubt, next door. We make for some very good people." See, advertisement. He is not here, but we can take your orders, and we are quite renowned, and we make for some famous people, so we can make for you too. Yes, I said. "But Mr. Gessler?" "Oh," he answered, "dead." The younger Gessler is also dead. "Dead? But I only received these boots from him last Wednesday week." Ah, he said, a shocking go. Poor old man starved himself. Ah, that was a very pathetic death. This poor man, he virtually starved to death. Good God! That is the shocking response of the narrator. Slow starvation, the doctor called it. You see, he went to work in such a way, would keep the shop on, wouldn't have a soul touch his boots except himself. When he got an order, it took him such a time. People won't wait. He lost everybody. And there he would sit, going on and on. I will say that for him. Not a man in London made a better boot, but look at the competition. He never advertised. Would have the best leather too, and do it all himself. Well, there it is. What could you expect with his ideas? But starvation, the man, that may be a bit flowery as the saying is, but I know myself he was sitting over his boots day and night. Well, starvation exactly may not be the reason. That is a little exaggerated, maybe, as people say. But then I know that this man, well, he should have moved with the changing times. He did not do that. He wanted to use the best quality leather. He would not let anyone else touch his boots. He would do everything with his own hands. And he would take such a long time to finish his boots and deliver them. Naturally, what happened? People don't have time. They wouldn't place orders and wait for weeks before they got the delivery of their boots. So that's what happened. I know myself, he was sitting over his boots day and night. To the very last, you see. I used to watch him. Never gave himself time to eat. Never had a penny in the house. All went in rent and leather. How he lived so long, I don't know. He regular let his fire go out. His fire would go out, he wouldn't be cooking anything regularly. On a regular basis, there would be no fire burning inside his kitchen. And that means there was no breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So if this goes on, if a man earns so less and then spends everything on leather and on rent, how could he possibly survive? So he didn't survive, he died. He was a character, but he made good boots. This man, who is himself a bootmaker, runs a shoe store, has taken over the Kessler Brothers shop, is still admitting again and again that he used to make good boots. Yes, I said he made good boots. And I turned and went out quickly, for I did not want that youth to know that I could hardly see. Why do you think that the narrator could hardly see? And why do you think that he turned around and he went out without showing his face anymore to the young man, to the youth sitting inside the shop, the Englishman, the new owner of the shop, that he could hardly see? He did not want him to see that he could hardly see. Well, because his eyes were filled with water. The narrator's eyes were filled with tears. It came as such a shock to him that Mr. Gessler had died, and that too out of starvation, that he had tears in his eyes, and he did not want to show his tears to this man. So he turned away his face and he quickly came out into the street with tearful eyes. So with that, the story comes to an end. I'm sure you have understood how this particular short story brings us to the biggest or the harshest reality of life, that in this world of cutthroat competition, one needs to survive by upgrading oneself. If one doesn't do that, then one has to fade out, one has to die, one has to make room for the new generation. So that is what the story is all about. Thank you very much.